Boys Kick-Ass Podcast.
Your Fight Talk Authority.
Not to mention the most entertaining and talked about podcast with your kick-ass host, Richard Ortiz.
You mad? Come at me, bro.
And his loyal kick-ass co-host, Senor Cole Escovedo.
Streaming live and worldwide.
Coming to you all the way live from a little place somewhere in Cali. The Fighters Voice Kick-Ass Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're live. I'm your host, Richard Ortiz of the Fighter's Voice Kick-Ass Podcast. Along my side, by way of Zoom, is my co-host with the most, the UFC veteran himself, the Apache Kid, Mr. Cole Escovedo. What's happening, Cole?
What's going on, amigo? How's your night been?
My night has been great, man. I've been working my rehab on my knees, man, and I've been excited about today's show, man. I don't even want to miss a minute or a second. Let me introduce our guest to the fans, the followers, and the supporters. Ladies and gentlemen, the man, the myth, the legend, the Emmy Award-winning sports broadcaster, blow-by-blow, Showtime boxing at its best, and also the co-host of nationally syndicated show, the NBA and the NFL radio, Fox Sports, you name it. The only thing he hasn't grabbed the mic on for is accepting Academy Award. I mean, this is talented. Every time he interviews somebody, it's like they're honored. It's like putting on the WBC, the WBOIBF, or WBA strap. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Mr. Brian Custer. How you doing, sir?
Man, I love it. And you read the intro exactly how I gave it to you. So that's what I'm most happy about.
Hey, man,
it's a verbatim type system.
Right, exactly, Cole. I love it.
No, hey, trust me. Richard is a man that prides himself on a very few minute things, like getting someone's name right. Like, I'll watch him and he'll just be running it over and over and over because he's like, why does this not sound right? And then he'll look into it, be like, see, and then he'll watch a video and be like, nope, see, I knew I was doing it wrong. And he'll make sure it's rocked out. So when he reads something, he's like, nope, they sent it. That's what they want. That's what I'm going to give them because that's what he does. Like,
preparation is the key, my brother.
Exactly.
Preparation is the key.
Exactly.
Man, Cole, I'm even afraid to speak after that, my man.
Your attention to detail is fully based by your commitment, amigo, and your commitment is strong. That's what a lot of people, I don't think, realize about some things when they see people doing stuff. Like, take Conor, for example. We're always talking about Conor. You know, everyone was like, oh, he's cocky, he's this, he's that. Was he, though, or was he just somebody that just believed in himself just more than everybody else? And that's really all it takes, kind of thing, maybe.
Yeah.
Exactly. And Brian, let me just prep you, man. I mean, our co-host is the UFC veteran, so you're going to get a lot of questions and terminologies thrown your way, but only a man of your success and the knowledge you have for combat sports, man, you could identify and you can answer and adapt to these questions, man.
Oh, absolutely. No problem, man. I'm ready.
Hey, you know what? Let's not even put this on hold. I want to get it off the ice package. Let's talk about last weekend. Let's talk about that vicious uppercut. Let's talk about the fight where Leo Santa Cruz dared himself to be great, called for the challenge, accepted the challenge, and in the sport of boxing, all it takes is one, in the discipline and focus of Tank Davis.
Yeah, I think, obviously a great showing for Tank. That uppercut was trending around the world. So obviously it sent shockwaves throughout the combat sports arena. It was a great showing for him. And listen, it shows just how smart of a fighter that he is. You know, if you look at it, Leo, I think, made the mistake of just throwing, if I'm not mistaken, 3 straight right hands off that rope. The first one hit Tank. I think the second one he slipped. And then the third one, he slipped and threw the uppercut. And I think, punch placement is the key in boxing. And I think when he hit him right here on the chin. And we all know, you hit somebody right there on the chin, it's night-night. And, I'm just happy Leo was great, was better, went to the hospital, had scans done. They came back negative. So he was back at the hotel later that night. I did send him a text. He texted me back the next day, saying that he's fine, he's all good. I thought it was a heck of a fight because Leo, I thought, really fought well for like the first 5 rounds of that fight. Listen, you got to stay focused the whole time. And Leo knew that. He knew going into this one, I just have to make sure I stay alert. And he just made a crucial mistake on the ropes. I think next time he'll realize, hey, look, I throw that right hand, I got to get out of there. don't stay there on the ropes, especially with a big puncher like Gervonta.
You know what? I agree with you. And the key to a southpaw is the right-hand lead. But when you throw 3 in a row, something has to give. And
Yes.
talking about that left hook, that's the equivalent of a walk-off grand slam game winner.
We were talking about that just before, Brian, just before you came on. We were talking about that fight and that first right landed, and it told him, you're not going to drop me from where you're at. You can't generate enough power. The second one was timing, and then once he threw that second one and it didn't land, he's like, now I know the timing. He threw that third one, got in close. You can hit me. You're not going to drop me. Boom, dude. Like I saw Rich, man. He took that kid's soul. His body just said, no mas. It just stopped. He said, no, thank you. Like, I've seen people get knocked out, but, like, sometimes people just drop and their body's just like, check, please. Yeah. Sometimes you just get clipped, and it's, like you said, those ones you don't see. It comes from a blind spot. You don't see it. You're wide open. That right hand just wasn't fast on the recovery, and bing, that's all it took. Like you said, too many rights in a row.
Yeah, you're right about that. And, and this I also, if you watch it again, it goes to show you how smart Tank is as a fighter, because if you watch when they first got there on the ropes, he threw it, he hit him. Tank, he was getting ready to move, and Tank kind of moved him right back to the ropes. Like, no, stay right there. Stay right here. No, don't go there. Stay right here. And so he knew, okay, he's going to throw that right again. He slipped it, and then boom, he got him. So it just goes to show, even as a youngster, even though he's 25, he's special. And I think the great thing for the sport of boxing is that you got some great young talent at 130, 135, and can make some really, really special fights.
I agree with you. I mean, this talent pool is a matchmaker's dream. And these guys, they market themselves. Every time they get on social media or anything they say right now in boxing, it is gold. Right now is the time to be a contender, a prospect in the sport of boxing.
No, absolutely. I mean, you look at – I just like the depth of the divisions, 130, 135. I mean, you just got nothing but really good young fighters there. I mean, 147 is always going to be a landmine, a big elite fighter. So you always have gold in that one. But I tell you, 154 is probably one of the best divisions in the sport, because you just got fighter after fighter after fighter, from Charlo to Hurd to J-Rock to you name it in at 154. Then you've got guys at 160, 168. The heavyweight division is finally back and good and thriving. So you look at it from top to bottom, finally the sport of boxing is really good and really deep in a number of weight divisions.
And see, the thing about it is, it's like a throwback to the Salvador Sanchez, Azuma Nelson days, because the little guys are putting butts in the seats. I mean, it was the welterweight division, the Tommy Hearns, the Marvin Haglers, Roberto Duran's, etc., or the heavyweight division. But when you got 130-pounders, 135s, putting butts in seats, bringing action, and then loading dynamite in their hands, I mean, it's very exciting. The sweet science is taking off. It's back where it needed to be.
Yeah, you're right. You're right about that. I mean, even if you go back to Teofimo and Lomachenko, for them to pull in 3 million views and ratings there for ESPN is phenomenal, and that just goes to show you the star power. And listen, those guys are good. I mean, Teofimo, as you talked about, he could put you to sleep with either hand. So that's what you love. That's why I always, when people always say, well, the sport of boxing slowly come back. No, it's back. I mean, people who love the sport are watching, and even the casual fans are watching now as well.
In that right there, the casual fan aspect is, I think, what's going to be key to boxing right now, is because the casual fan is being treated to a very pure boxing experience. There's not super questionable fights. There's not lopsided matches. It's everyone's like, dude, that is a good fight. The experts say it. The newer fans are learning, so the newer fans will be like, all right, my buddy knows what he's talking about. I'm going to watch. Man, the pros know what they're talking about. I'm definitely watching this guy. They're getting the exposure. That's going to be – I mean, just imagine how much money is going to be up for grabs when you can actually put seats in an arena again. These guys are generating clicks. They're generating links, views, YouTube follows, Instagram follows. Like, streaming systems are growing just on that alone. Imagine what it'll be like for them once they've established a core base following, made themselves a household name on the streaming market. Now you can go watch them live. Dude, I think that's going to be a big change. I mean, that'll work for at least the UFC. It'd be an arguing point for fighters, at least, when those fights go back in for the promotions, with TV deals at least.
Yes, that's a seminal point there, Cole, and it's a really good point because, you know, you look at with us and Showtime, with us doing that fight at the Alamo Dome. Listen, the Texas Commission only allowed us to basically put 10,000. You know, that dome holds 65, and so Tank and Leo sold that out. So
of course.
Just imagine if it was. We could sell it, and we could sell, and we didn't have the COVID. I mean, we could have easily had over 20,000 people in there. I mean, because it was, I mean, they sold that thing out, and there were basically no more tickets by that Thursday. It was a sellout. So he's right. I mean, you look at it now. I mean, you're gonna, and that just goes to show you what Tank has done in the past. I mean, when we did his fight last year in Atlanta, he sold out the Hawks Arena. The fight before that in his hometown of Baltimore, he sold out that arena in downtown Baltimore. And as he pointed out, this is a 135 pounder, but he hits like Mike Tyson, and that's what people want to see. They want to see action. They want to see knockouts.
You know, you said it best. You said he's special. And what I was most impressed with was the discipline. Because everybody attached, okay, he's very undisciplined. He has the stories. He's had writers and everybody and their grandma wanted to attach that to his name. Well, they need to cut that part off. And the potential, he showed promise and potential, and sky is the limit because to come in focused and with the game plan. And gentlemen, him having up against the ropes was no mistake. That was definitely their game plan, get him in the ropes. Because in the middle of the ring, yes, he's going to have success, but that's where Leo's very effective. I mean, Leo's not going to get on his wheels. All Leo knows is to stand and bang. But definitely Tank Davis, he wanted to get his opponent on the ropes. Every time I saw sparring, his opponent was on the ropes. And you got the
Well, I think the key to what you said was Floyd Mayweather. Because, you know, look, that's his fighter. And Floyd told him, hey, look, 15 years ago, was when I made my first pay-per-view, you know, basically De La Hoya, and I was in it. I was ready. And if you're going to be on pay-per-view and you got people paying for your fight, you got to be in shape. And we're not going to have no questions about you not making weight, no questions about you gassing out in the second half of a fight or things of that nature. You know, as opposed to his customary 8 weeks, he spent the entire 14 weeks in Las Vegas with Floyd, running with Floyd. Floyd was in the ring with him, showing him, hey, look, Leo does this. Get him against the ropes. Do this, and this. And he was giving him all of those Mayweather tips because he wanted to make sure that his fighter was ready and showed the world that he's the best 130, 135 pounder. And I think the key for Tank now is he's probably showing that, okay, yes, I know Teofimo has done a phenomenal job because obviously you beat Lomachenko, but I think from the marketing standpoint, selling out arenas, Tank has already proven he can do that. And so now he feels as if, okay, I can call the shots on who I want to fight, whether it's Teofimo, whether whomever. You know, I know a number of people are going to try to call me out, but now I'm going to dictate who I'm going to fight because I'm the guy who, A, brought in pay-per-view numbers, B, I sell out arenas. But all of that happened, I think, because Floyd made sure that this kid was in shape and this kid was ready to answer any the criticism that people have for him, whether or not making weight, whether or not he would gas out. You could see that Tank looked good and could go all 12 if he had to. And I think a lot of that credit goes to Floyd Mayweather, who was very hands-on for him in this camp.
I agree with you. You know what, Brian, you said A and B, but most of all C, the man delivered. And when people pay for a pizza or a steak, they want it well done or they want extra cheese. And he brought all the accessories, put a cherry on top of it, a bow tie, opened his present before Christmas, and as if to say, hey, I am here, I have arrived, and I am in charge of my own destiny. And someone like Floyd Mayweather, And you got to remember, there's pressure on Floyd too. Anything he touches or markets, his name is on there. The expectation of who's the next Floyd, what comes out of Floyd's camp, his gym, and now he has himself a gem. Plain and simple, Tank Davis is taking the boxing storm, and he is indefinitely behind the driver's seat.
So, from a devil's advocate's perspective, you were mentioning, Brian, that Floyd was in the ring with him. He was giving him those play-by-plays. He was giving him that handbook. So let's paint the picture of the Patriots. The Patriots have been accused a couple times of spying on their team and filming their practices, right? Getting that knowledge, right? They use that knowledge in order to play against them effectively. I think it's fair game, personally, but I don't really follow football that much, so I don't know the ins and outs. But in this sense, I bring it up because do you think he would have done as well against his opponent had he not had that insider trader type knowledge from Mayweather, who's able to get there and go, no matter what, it's ingrained in him. Like Tyson's chin block here, no matter what, he's going to fall back on this. It's ingrained. Right. Once he's on the ropes, he's going to throw that right. He can't do it. No matter what, I don't care if it's Freddie Roach, I don't care if it's Robert Garcia, they're not training that out of him. He's got that. You get him against the rope, his body will panic, and he will go back to this. Without that knowledge, or similar bits of knowledge, do you think he would have been as effective?
I think it's a great question, Cole, and it's a question that I don't know if we can answer. Exactly. I think that I did think it was interesting, and this was just me, because I think Calvin Ford's a great coach for Tank. He's like a father figure for him. He's been his only coach. But I was watching that dynamic because Floyd was very hands-on. And if you're Calvin Ford, this has been your son. Now all of a sudden Floyd's like, no, this is pay-per-view here. This is our first pay-per-view with this kid. I'm going to make sure he's ready. I'm going to make sure he's this. How is that dynamic? And they said all the right things. Hey, no, he's the trainer. But yet, you hear the stories. It was more Floyd who was giving him, saying, you need to do this. You need to do this. I've seen Leo fight a number of times. He does this. You do that. That kind of thing. They said all the right things. Obviously, only that camp knows. But I did think it was really interesting that even if you watch the fight, and as Calvin's talking to him, if you noticed a number of times when Tank was on his chair, he looked down over there, and who was that? It was Floyd right there to his left saying, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to. So even that dynamic to me was very interesting, and one that I was watching because, I think if I'm Calvin Ford, I'm like, man, this is my guy, but yet Floyd's come in here and basically taken over. But you know what? They got the win. In the end, you get the win, and no one's talking about it, and there's no need to talk about it because they got the win.
And now, do you think they'd be talking about it if he had got the loss?
If they got the loss, I think that would be a topic of discussion. Like, so who were you following Floyd's plan? Was it Calvin's plan? Whose plan? Well, maybe do you have mixed messages? That kind of thing. That might have been the talk out of there had there been a loss. But like you said, when you win, nobody's talking about that. Nobody's even thinking about that. All they're thinking about is that knockout.
True. But on Calvin's part, it does go to show the long-term big picture where he's like, look, I can either bitch and moan about, oh, that's my guy, or I can just go, look, it's showtime, it's big boy time, Mayweather's the man, he has knowledge I don't have, what's our goal here? To see him win.
Yes.
Fuck it, let's go. Get on board.
Absolutely.
And that's what I think probably happened as far as that goes. So he's like, well, I don't need to step on toes. Like, we already had a discussion. Mayweather's the lead guy on this. His experience will lead the way to the Holy Land. So why bump heads? Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're right on it, 100%.
You said it best. Pay-per-view. That's where Mayweather takes over. As if to say, back in the Cowboy days, Michael Irvin catching a one-hand grab. They're in the red zone. Okay, Emmett's like, okay, give me the ball now. I'll take it from here, as if to say. But in doing so, Mayweather's input, he's been there, done that. And they just got to communicate. It worked. It's a formula. And there was no way Mayweather was going to just stay seated and sit down and just be another face in the crowd. He was very vocal. He was that chip on the shoulder that he needed to succeed, that experience. And you know, when Dad says, "Hey, I believe in you," as if to say that's what took place. Look what the Karate Kid did with Mr. Miyagi there. You know, hey, you can put the 2 and 2 together. Whatever inspires you, you're going to succeed, man, and come forth with your best.
Well, you know, and you guys know this too, Rich. You know this, Cole. When you're as talented as Gervonta is, and your promoter is Floyd Mayweather, it is a blessing. It's also a curse. Yeah. It's a blessing because Floyd is your promoter. He's going to get you opportunities sometimes that other fighters aren't going to get because he's Floyd Mayweather. Now, the curse is if you're Cole or you're Gervonta, you are now finally seeing your dreams. You want to be a pay-per-view star. You're on that platform, and you want to speak. You want to be the center of attention. Well, listen, when Floyd's your promoter, I mean, this is what he does. He is Mr. Pay-per-view, or as he said in the All Access, May-per-view. So you need to lean on Floyd to help sell that fight. And that's why you saw Floyd doing a lot of talk. Oh, the belt system is crazy. We need just one belt because Gervonta should be the only champion at that. And all of a sudden you saw these stories about Floyd, and he kind of brought it back to Gervonta, but it was also him help selling the fight because Gervonta doesn't have that big personality. At the heart of the core, he's really a quiet kid.
Yes, he is.
The crazy thing is he's got insane power when he's in the ring. He's a different person. Out of the ring, he's more quiet and a very shy, somewhat kid.
Dangerous ones.
And he almost needs a Floyd Mayweather to be his mouthpiece to do the speaking. But yet he wants to be the center of the attention because he feels like it's finally my time. But when you don't have that kind of personality, you need somebody like Floyd to help sell it, and that's exactly what he does. And that's the blessing that comes with Floyd Mayweather being your promoter.
You know, Brian, he says something that I see a lot in boxing, and I know it comes with excitement, but he posted on Twitter, he said, why would somebody in my corner grab me right during my victory? You know, I didn't get a chance to soak it all in. You know, like when someone hits a walk-off home run and you know, they want to come all the way to the bases and they just jump on them right there because they're excited because as if to say, I'm part of that knockout. I'm part of that home run. But Conor McGregor said it best. He said, next time I just need to sit back and just soak it all in. Yeah. And he posted that. And when I heard that, it reminded me of just like you said, he's still a little kid. He's very young. You can even tell by his laughter, the way he laughs. Reminds me of just a young teenager having a good time, having fun. But once he's in that ring, he's definitely 100% man.
Yeah, you know, I've had the opportunity to sit with him when we did his fight in Atlanta, when we went to Baltimore, and he took me back into his neighborhood. So listen, is he an angel? Absolutely not. But you kind of understand why he is the way he is when you understand his story. Just like Leo came from poverty and how hard his father worked to help his sons have a better life. And obviously, you know, they turn out, especially Leo, to be this champion and kind of as being able to repay the family. For Gervonta, it's been self-made. I mean, this is a guy whose mother was on drugs, father on drugs, in prison. So at birth, you know, basically he already had 2 strikes against him. And him and his brothers were taken away from them when he was like 3, was in the system, and then went from the system to basically an orphanage, property of the state. His grandmother finally had to fight to get them. And then when she finally got them, she really couldn't afford to keep them. So the uncle ended up getting him. And the only reason why he did it was because he knew he would get a state check, because he became the guardian of Gervonta and his brother. And at this time, Gervonta's 7 years old. So he's living with his uncle, and his uncle did nothing but just beat him. He said he would wake him up in the middle of the night, beat him and his brother, tell him, go take the trash out. And then he said they would take the trash out. Then he beat him again and said, go clean. And then he would let them go back to sleep. And he said at that time they were trying to run away just to try to get out of the house. But the uncle wanted them there because he got the state money for being their guardian. When you think about the lifestyle that kid grew up in, and for him to survive when basically everybody around him ended up getting shot and killed, it's amazing. It is amazing, and I can understand why. Listen, he does some things where you just scratch your head. You're like, what are you doing out of the ring? But then when you understand how he grew up, okay, I can understand it. But really, at the core, he is a very quiet and a sweet kid. I just think that, sometimes you're a product of your environment. And his environment has been a rough one. But I tell you what, he always says this, the rage, the anger that I have had to see and grew up with is what I use when I get into the ring. And he told me this. He says, that's why I believe, Brian, there's nobody in the sport that can beat me. Because of everything I've been through, I know that person across from me has not seen or been through the same things I've been through. And that's what carries me through these fights. Obviously, it's done him well thus far.
That is a very deep story, and that is the harsh reality of growing up. And like you said, he grew up with 2 strikes on him. And I'm just glad that you're as good as your last fight, you're as good as your last conversation, you're good as your last interview. And the thing that he said to me that stuck out in me, and honestly, it almost brought me to tears because I know Leo Santa Cruz's story with his father.
Yeah.
That Leo Santa Cruz's father, he was the true champion. After that, I didn't even hear anything else. Whatever he said, anything else. I'm concentrating on that, and just his whole story in itself. He is a true walking monument and a true champion of fighting cancer, defeating cancer, and didn't let cancer stop him from enjoying the fruits of the labor that he invested in his son. And what
I think that's why we love guys like Cole and guys who fight, because everybody has a story, and it always seems as if guys who fight, their stories are just a little more special, and how they became champions is always impressive to me. And you're right. I mean, the way he loves his father was the only one who told him, you can win this fight, but you have to stick to these edicts that I'm going to tell you to do. But I think his brothers, all of them, were like, I wouldn't touch Tank. But when his dad told him, I think you can win it, he was like, okay, I'm all in. Let's do it. And, when he comes down, as you point out, he has cancer. He had taken chemo. And then he comes down with COVID in June. I mean, he was hospitalized for a month and a half, basically. And they called him and said, look, you guys as a family, I know, you guys don't want to get COVID, but you probably want to come and say your last goodbyes because this is it. And they put him basically on life support so the family could go see him. And Leo and even Jose, Mr. Santa Cruz, said this. They came to the hospital, saw him, said their all last goodbyes. They gave him the last rites, this and that. And he basically died. And Mr. Santa Cruz says he saw white. He said he just remembers closing his eyes and seeing white. And next thing he knows, he opened his eyes again, and the family was around him. And so it was amazing that once they left, they turned the machines off, his heart started pumping again. And to hear them tell that story, it was like, wow, this is unbelievable. And so, obviously, Leo was motivated. I mean, once his dad came back, absolutely, I'm going full tilt with it. This is why I fight. And, listen, he was ready. Again, when you're in that ring with a guy like Gervonta, you got to be alert at all times. And if there's even a second when you let your guard down and you throw one too many rights and telegraph that thing, you better be ready and throw it and keep that hand right back up there. And he didn't. He threw it, left it out, and paid the price.
I agree with you. They both got great stories. Brian, I want to change it up just a bit. And I know you definitely follow MMA and you follow other combat sports. But we're talking about that we could have witnessed last Saturday as well as the last time that we would see, as they call the GOAT, Anderson Silva, inside of the cage. What did you think about his performance? What did you think about the comment that he said, I may not be done just yet?
I know. That's – my gosh. I'm wanting to stop already, Cole, Rich. I mean, I love Anderson Silva. You're right. I mean, but it's like, please stop already. You know, it's almost. I can bring it back to Muhammad Ali. You know, when he's fighting Holmes and those guys, and it's like, no, what are you doing? And listen, I know people. It's easy for me to say you're killing your legacy. Listen, he's a GOAT. You look at it, that legacy is already going to be intact. You never want to see, though, your heroes just getting beat. And not to say that he's getting beat by scrubs, but getting beat by guys that, you know, in his heyday he wouldn't have lost to. And
he's kind of fallen to gatekeeper status.
Yes. And that's the last thing you want to see. Yeah. The absolute last thing you want to see. Listen, to me, and I know this is ridiculous, but when he lost to Weidman and heck broke the leg, I was like, okay, that's enough, bro. Brother Silva, hang him up then. Hang him up. But, you know, hey, when you got it in you and you feel like I could have won this, had my leg not been busted.
Not been broken or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I feel it's just I think what will happen is I was talking to his manager yesterday about it. I was like, hey, when do you think we can get, you know, Anderson on? Because I've worked with him before as far as, like, getting some motivational information out to another fighter who had a similar break. So I've got a relationship. And he said, let's give it a couple weeks and let's see. So, I mean, realistically, it's right up there with I don't think this is significant of a decision as Khabib's got right now, but it is definitely a significant decision where this is Anderson Silva is one of those people. He's a Randy Couture. He's a Chuck Liddell. Yeah. He's a Vitor Belfort. He's this is a guy who, when you think MMA, even the casual fan thinks the Spider.
Absolutely.
Even your casual fan.
Yes.
So, you know, they don't think Cody Garbrandt.
Nope.
They don't think Darren Till. They even kind of think Jorge Masvidal now, since he's just.
Yes.
But they always know Anderson Silva, and they'd be like, dude, that guy's the best. Yep. And he is. And like Brian said, his legacy will never – you can't really tarnish your fighting legacy unless you get caught doing something Pete Rose level, like cheating, you know, you find out that there was something in your glove, or you find out your manager was paying your opponents off.
Right.
Like something really bad. So other than that legacy is intact. Brian's right. The legacy is intact, and it's right. You don't want to see your fighters falling into that gatekeeper status where it's like, man – 2-3 years ago, Anderson probably would have been able to finish Uriah off.
Yes.
But now he's just a little slower. He just dodges a little less. He doesn't let that reach out as much. And that's all that happened is Hall caught him.
Yeah.
Hall caught him in the fourth. Finally, that reach finally caught up to him, and he was just a little slower getting back because we all know he's got that lean.
Yeah,
just a little slow getting back, and that's all it takes. So now you have to go, are we going to have another Rashad Evans? Are we going to have another Chuck Liddell? Do we want to see a guy that's just so up there fight for no reason? Like, now if Anderson comes back and goes, you know, I need the money, I have a bad real estate something, I don't think that's going to happen because he's a smart man. His manager's smart. His money's been handled correctly. The dude's got so much money coming in from other stuff outside of fighting that I don't think he needs the money. This is one of those things where it's like he's going to fight because at the end of the day, we're fighters, and if we think we can fight, we're probably going to try to fight.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's one of those things like I remember my neurosurgeon telling me when I was paralyzed, he was telling me, he's like, so when can I start training? He'd be like, dude, you'd be lucky if you walk again. I'd be like, I'll give you tickets to my first fight back. And I did.
Right.
I gave him tickets because it happens. But he's one of those guys that's like, when I want to quit, I'll quit. So for him to say, I don't know, but this is probably it, means that he's had that conversation with himself.
Yeah.
Maybe not a manager, maybe not Dana, but in the mirror or in the dark, he's had that conversation with, maybe it's time, you know, like, why am I still doing this? Everybody has to have that question with a career, not just fighting, but with a career that you maybe aren't doing that well in anymore. You're still good.
Yeah.
But you just, I don't know. I'm hoping he had that conversation with himself because he was thinking about it. You know, the wheels are turning. Is it time to, it's not like he can't do something else in the sport. It's just, you gotta, it's hard for some guys to just go, that's it. I'm done, because it defines you. Yes. It becomes literally, who is Anderson Silva? I am the fucking man. Yeah. I'm the GOAT. So what do you do when you're no longer in that sport? You're no longer on the battlefield. You're no longer enlisted. What do you do? when it becomes a defining part of you, how do you go on with self-identification anymore? Where do you belong in the world? What does the universe do with you?
Brian, if you were part of Team Silva and you're sitting at that table for a conversation, a team meeting, what are some of the topics that you're going to bring up? What are your concerns with this showing, and if you were Team Silva?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is I'm talking to him about health. And listen, man, you can really get hurt. Let's get out while you can, while you got your faculties somewhat, and that you haven't taken a really bad, whether it is a submission or, someone drops you and takes you out cold. You hit your head. So that, I think that would probably be the first thing. The second thing is, I think what Cole talks about is that you got to try to help him make sure that finds, if I'm having this conversation with him, I'm also thinking like, what can we talk to him about doing out of the ring that will give him somewhat of a thrill, and that he feels like, okay, I'm connected, yet this is cool. I'm not taking any punches anymore and things of that nature. And the only reason why I say that is, I had Sugar Ray Leonard on my podcast, and we talked about some of his addictions. Why did he do cocaine? Why did he have a drinking problem? Which he, obviously he still goes to AA meetings today. And he said what people didn't understand was when I suffered that detached retina and they told me, hey, look, it's probably best that you stop fighting. And that one of those first times I retired, I was like, I'm still a young man. I'm still 30, what have you. And I can't believe it. My career may be over. It's really just beginning. I've had so many good fights. I got so many more in me. That's when I really started drinking. Then he came back, said, forget it. I'm going to do it anyway. Came back, doing it. Then all of a sudden had to decide to retire again. And he said, that's when someone said, look, you feeling bad? Try this cocaine. And he said, once I tried it that first time, I was hooked. It was the worst thing I could have done. He said, but I was looking for a thrill. I didn't have the thrill. I wanted people to call my name. I didn't have that rush. I could train, but for me, it was walking into that arena, making that walk to the ring, hearing that crowd, and knowing that, oh, yeah, I trained for this guy, that I'm about to get in the ring for this guy. And I missed that. And there's nothing that could give me that kind of rush that I was doing, even broadcasting the fights. I loved doing them, and I was doing them there, and I was doing some of the biggest fights. And he said, but I still didn't get that thrill of, man, that needs to be me making that ring walk right now. That needs to be me in that ring. It's just hard, and Cole's right. I mean, those guys just have to get it out of them, and that's probably why some of these guys stay so long.
I mean, you look at you'll probably find the same thing with Formula One racers, base jumpers, skydivers. The same guys are going to be like, dude, why did you do that insane jump? Because it was more dangerous than the last one. What are you going to do next? I'm going to try to top that, and I don't know how. Maybe blindfolded. Yeah. So it's a thing where, like I said, it's a drug. So if you're a heroin addict, how do you get off heroin? Methadone or whatever. I know if I'm misspeaking, anyone watching, I apologize if I'm misspeaking on what they were using to get you off. But they would give you something to wean you off of heroin, right? So what do you do for that? What do you do for an adrenaline junkie? When all they did was their whole thing was getting just jacked on adrenaline because the crowd and the name. I mean, dude, having Bruce Buffer yell your name in your face, even into a crowd of just like, I don't give a crap, dude. Even in a prelim match in an empty arena, dude, it's Bruce Buffer screaming your name. You can't have that unless you get to that level. And to have a crowd screaming because you're at the highest level, it's like walking out to the mound of the World Series maybe. You've never been there. You're a new guy to the team. It's your first year. You've never been to the big show. And boom, your team makes the World Series. And you're just up at bat. Dude, you're going to catch the guy doing this, clicking off his heels for a minute going, oh, man, I'm really here. Okay, all right, let's do this. He cares if he swings and misses. But the same thing is you can't match that. It's a drug. You're always chasing the dragon when it comes to an adrenaline junkie. So when a fighter has that, it's hard. They don't know what to do. It's like, how do you chase that? So like I said, they can't equate it to anything. So they do fall into drinking. They do fall into other things. Even an exciting drug like heroin could kill you with one try. Dude, let's do that. Like,
Right.
where do you find this stuff? Like, they drive fast. Like, what was the name of that boxer that just won his belt and then that weekend just jacked his car up? Who was that?
That was actually
Well,
his guest last night.
You talking about Errol Spence?
Yeah, that's
the dude that wrecked his Lambo?
Yeah.
Yes, that's Errol Spence.
That, when I saw that, I was like, damn, that was dumb. But at the same time, I'm thinking, not surprising. Not because I think the guy's an idiot, but because we are just prone to that. When your life, the way you make money and sustain a living is by being the baddest motherfucker in the room, it's hard to not want to do everything else to an extreme. I got a Lambo. That thing says 220. Let's find out.
Yes.
Oops, hit a rock. Like,
Yes.
if you die, you die. There's this fearless factor. Like, realistically, psychologists sit down with young fighters and Formula One guys and adrenaline guys and take MRIs, take brain samples, do tests, get an understanding of what's really going on, because until you really get hurt, like that guy that doesn't get his ass kicked once, maybe your parachute doesn't open till the last second, maybe you get a bad crash. Until that happens, dude, aliens. You're living like sky high. There is no fear for you.
Well, there's the term, Brian, a fighter is special, and then there's the time is a fighter because of that certain reason. I mean, for any man to get in the boxing ring or MMA cage, it tells you they are a little different. Now, I'm going to see if I can steal something from you. What can we expect from that interview that you had with Spence? How is he feeling going into this fight with Danny Swift Garcia? What's his take? And I'm sure he's up to here ready with, hey, are you going to be okay because of what happened coming back from that accident?
Well, it's a great question. And, so I spoke with Errol and his trainer, Derek James. We did it together with both of those guys. And podcast.
Congratulations, Derek James. He just put himself to the top as far as the trainers. Yeah, so congratulations to him and his team.
Only trainer in the sport of boxing right now who has two unified champions that he's training right now with Errol Spence and Jermell Charlo. But Errol is, first of all, if you watch it, you'll see he's cut, he's ready. And I think the one thing that has motivated him is that, he knows that people think like, man, there's no way he can be the old Errol after that car wreck. And listen, he says, and God gave him a second opportunity. The crazy thing from that, even being thrown like 50 feet in the air from that car, no broken bones. The only thing he did was that knocked out some of his teeth and, facial lacerations because his face was swollen. But for him not to have any broken bones at all is amazing.
Somebody get some kryptonite.
Yeah.
Like, test that dude's blood, because he didn't break a single bone.
No bone.
That's insane.
Isn't that crazy?
Now, that's how you know he was lit drunk.
That's when you know he's Bruce Willis on what's the movie, Unbreakable or Breakable?
Yeah. Unbreakable. Yeah, that Night Shyamalan.
Yes, exactly.
But that's insane.
But to Cole's point, Errol will talk about that in the episode. Even that night, he says he's out with his friends, and he said, I admit, I have been, because I was the unified champ, we're having a good time, I wasn't as diligent in between fights as I should have been. And had just gotten his Lambo. We go out. He goes, this guy came up to him at the club there they were and said, man, I'm such a big fan. If you don't mind, I just want to pray for you. And he said, I looked at this guy like, what are you doing? We're here to party and have a good time. That's cool, but and he said, I almost kind of like pushed the guy aside. And he says, but now when I look back on it, it was almost a sign saying, hey, you need to slow down on what you're doing. And I think it's motivation for him, because I think he realized, people are like, oh, I don't think he'll be the same guy. Well, he's read the blogs. He keeps up with what people have been saying, and he's really motivated. And, it's kind of refocused his life. Obviously he knows that his family is most important. He just had a son. So now he has finally has a Errol Jr., the third, I should say. And, he realizes, like, okay, I have the opportunity to really be special in this sport and become the undisputed welterweight champion of the world, and I'm not going to squander it anymore and do stupid stuff. So he said, that's why I'm in shape now. I'm basically ready. I think when we talked, he was 152. So you see, he's already right there at 147, and the fight's December 5th. So he is already basically on weight and ready to show people that he's ready for Danny Garcia. He says he wants Garcia, and then after that, he said he wants Pacquiao. He's talked to Al Heyman about Pacquiao, and then Terrence Crawford. And he said those Pacquiao, Terrence Crawford are the two fights that he wants next year, and after that, he's moving up to 154.
I even heard, he's even talking about Canelo.
Yes.
So a lot of people, when they say that from the lower weight, they'll say, yeah, right. But when someone like Spence or Bud Crawford or the younger 154 Charlo brother, you stop what you're doing and you listen and say, you know what, that fight is now going to happen.
Yeah.
And just as a fight fan, media, we're still fans all at heart. That's everybody's dream fight. We want to see it happen. I mean, just like when he's playing.
He's a big welterweight. He's a big guy, and it's not. It wouldn't be anything for him to go to 160 and fight Canelo. Now he talks about that in the episode. By the way, you can check the podcast out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. He said the only issue that he hasn't pushed for it through Al Heyman right now is because of his respect. He loves the Charlos. They're like, they're the Texas boys, so they're really tight. And he knows that Jamal has been fiending for this fight for Canelo for almost a year now. And he said, I would never want to step on his toes and then big time him and say, Al, no, you get me Canelo, because Jerry, Errol has a very special relationship now at Cowboy Stadium and Jerry Jones. And Jerry Jones has already told him, as he talks about in the episode, you get the fight, we're doing it right here. We're doing it right here at Cowboy Stadium. We're going to sell this bad boy. Listen, we'll put 60,000 up in here, and we'll have a huge party inside this stadium. But he said, the last thing I want to do is do that to Jamal, who's been waiting for this guy for a year now. And he's like my brother. So I want Jamal to get that opportunity first. He said, but trust me, once one of the Charlos fighting, I got to be next when it comes to Canelo.
No, very well said, and I do agree with you that they are very close. And you know what? You touched on it right now, and I wanted to make sure that we talked about that. Tell us, the viewers, the fans, and the followers, man, what can we expect when we tune in to Last Stand?
Oh man, let me go into my cell mode. We like to say we give you the biggest names in sports and entertainment, the unfiltered, straight talk. So like I get guys like Cole on there. I'm like, look, you ain't going to bull stuff me, man. We're going to have a good conversation, but I want the unfiltered, straight talk out of you. And, guys are comfortable, and sometimes they say a lot of things that they just normally don't tell regular media. Errol has, been very open. We got Bud Crawford next week. Bud talks about Kell Brook. He talks about Errol Spence. He talks about everybody. And I think you'll learn some things about Bud Crawford in his episode, and that's kind of like what we do. We are all about, I want you to come on, but I want you to give the people something. I don't want you to give me the coach speak or the regular down the line stuff. I want the unfiltered, straight talk, and give me some of the stuff behind the scenes that happened that we didn't hear about. And so guys have been comfortable enough to share some of that. Right now we're working on, like I said, we got Errol and Derek. That episode is available now. Next Tuesday, we drop the episodes every Tuesday. Next Tuesday, you'll hear from Bud Crawford. And we're working on, and we should be scheduling, we're working on Deontay Wilder and Teofimo Lopez right now to get those guys too after Bud Crawford.
Well, how do we tune in? How do we follow you on that? How do we subscribe?
Go to YouTube. And just all you got to do is subscribe. Go to Last Stand Podcast with Brian Custer. You can do it on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, whether it's Spotify, Google Podcasts, all of those things. Podbean, we're on all of the podcast platforms as well. And the great thing is that it's been successful. We're now on 9 networks. So we're on the Family Channel, 11 Sports. We've turned the podcast into a TV show. And so it airs in over 100 million homes across the country. And the best thing for me to say is, whatever your cable system is, all you got to do is go to the menu guide and then look up, hit search, and just type in Last Stand or Last Stand with Brian Custer, and the show will pop up, and it'll show you what the channel that it's on in your cable directory, and you can watch the TV show now because we've turned it into a TV show as well.
Nice.
Well, first of all, I want to say iron sharpens iron, or microphone sharpens microphone. Now, like we talked to earlier today, and you kind of chuckled, I want to know exactly, basically, who shot Kennedy? You know, where did Brian Custer start? I mean, were you an athlete? Did you play football? What got you into sweet science? What got you into being a fan, covering it, and just taking it to the highest plateau? Where did it all start? Tell the viewers, the fans, and the listeners, please.
Yeah, I'm a Buckeye. So I was born and bred in Columbus, Ohio. And, you know, I think like most kids love sports, play sports, football, basketball. Went to Hampton University, loved basketball, played basketball. And after, you know, for me after college, I mean, I knew that I love television. I knew I wanted to work in television. And so basically that's how I got my start. And, you know, went home and was working in Columbus, Ohio at the ABC affiliate. And then I moved from there, went to Dallas, and I was in Dallas for almost 10 years. I was a sports anchor there at the CBS affiliate. Then went from Dallas to New York, worked at a sports network there, and just so happened that I've always loved boxing, always loved. Matter of fact, I'm a martial artist, so I'm a second-degree black belt in Taekwondo, so I've always loved martial arts and always loved the sweet science. So when I was in New York, a boxing promoter named Lou DiBella had a show on our network called Broadway Boxing. And, you know, listen, club shows are the lifeblood of boxing, of the sport. Every great fighter started on a club show for the most part. And so it is probably the longest running club show series on television. I think Lou's been doing it for nearly 20 years. And he had big fights all around the city. Guys like Curtis Stevens, Daniel, all these guys initially fought on Broadway Boxing. And it was on the network that I was working at in New York. And he just one day said, hey, look, man, I'm a big fan of yours. I need a play-by-play guy. Matter of fact, the guy who used to call the fights is a guy named Nick Charles, who passed away, was a great sports anchor who worked at CNN for a long time. Really, really consummate professional. He passed away from cancer, and he needed a play-by-play guy. And he said, listen.
I remember him covering the big fights, yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Nick Charles was a phenomenal guy. And he said, I need a new play-by-play guy, and I'm a big fan of your work. Do you know anything about boxing? I said, do I know anything? I love it. You know, I love martial arts. And so, I mean, that's how I knew Anderson Silva. I mean, you get into martial arts, it was, you know, Anderson Silva was the guy because he was a martial artist, you know? Mm-hmm. And he hired me to start calling his fights on Broadway Boxing. And so I was doing that, and just one day out of nowhere, I was in the newsroom, my phone rang, and it was my boss at Showtime. And he just said, you know, hey, I'm in New York on business, and I just turned on and I was watching this network, and I was watching you call these fights, and I would love for you to come work at Showtime. And that's really how I got to Showtime from that phone call, and I just never looked back.
Well, you know what? I'm glad it happened, because we get to tune in to not only just tuning in to information, but also be entertained.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I see you keep your composure on some of these answers, the fighters, and as if to say, I know they're at a bar, he joined in on that conversation, but you kind of shy away from it, but you don't cut him off. And I watch your body movement and your language, because I study you. I watch you. I watch your posture, your everything, your questions, your wittiness, and just having you on the show, man. Like I said, iron sharpens iron, but in this case, microphone sharpens microphone, my man.
Yeah. You know, listen, and Cole, you would know this. Like I got a lot of response. Listen, it was good and bad. Someone was like, "Oh, why did you have to go that hard?" The other people were like, "Yo, that was a damn good question." You know, when we first came into the bubble, and we were doing fights at Mohegan Sun with no fans, you know, remember we had David Benavidez, who, you know, world champion, everything, and he gets there and doesn't make weight, and tried to blame it on the bubble. And hey, I was didn't understand, and so we usually, the guy who's headlining, and obviously he was headlining because he was the main event, we do an interview in between rounds of for one of the first fights, and so I had him on. David, listen, I mean, you lost your title again. This time because of weight. Remember the first time was because of drug use. And David's a phenomenal young man. Don't get me wrong. Phenomenal young man. He obviously messed up the first time with the drug. He learned his lesson. But here, he doesn't make weight. And that can't happen when you're a champion. And so I said, you missed weight? He said, yeah, it's the bubble. I said, David, you have your own gym. You have your own gym and your own private gym. So why were you not on weight when you got here? And everybody was like, oh, my God, why'd you come at him like that? But I was like, how can I not ask him that question? I wouldn't be doing my job as a journalist if I didn't ask him that question, because he did. You had your own private gym. And so if I know I'm going into the bubble and they already told you, hey, look, you're not going to have any of the workout facilities. The only thing we can do for you is maybe bring you up a bike to your room or whatever. First thing I'm saying to myself is, you know what, we got to be on point that when we touch down on Monday. That way we ain't got no surprises. We can just maintain the rest of the week. And shame on you if you came here Monday and you still a couple pounds over, because he was like 1.5 pounds, I think, over when it came to weigh-in day on Friday. That can't happen, not when you're a champion and you own your own gym and it's private. You're the only one in there with other your guys who you've been working out with. There's no way that you should have been overweight for that weigh-in.
Super complacent. Like it's almost like he didn't take the whole thing seriously almost. And I'm not saying he didn't,
right?
But like that's usually when I see fighters who are overweight. It's like you're on a pro level. At this point, you're at this level. It's like you got a reason for why you didn't make weight. This isn't like, oh, it's a new weight cutting process. I didn't try. Bullshit. You don't take anything to chance when it comes to title fights. You don't mess with anything. You get Mike Dolce. You get a nutritionalist. You don't mess with that stuff. So when they come in overweight, like when we were watching the Khabib fight and that scale kept going up, I was like, oh, he's over. So, I spent $200 on Khabib or whatever, against him. But the point is that those weigh-ins, when they're over, there's a reason. And it turns out, like I think they were saying later, Khabib had a broken foot or a toe or something. So you're going to see effects whenever you see weights off. What happened in the camp? This isn't his first rodeo kind of thing. So you really don't have an excuse. He's right. With your own private gym, like, come on. Like, did you not use the gym? Did you lose the keys?
Right.
Like, I know Twinkies taste good, bro. But
right. So, but those are the questions you got to ask. And sometimes they may be uncomfortable. And for me, I'm not. Listen, I always tell people this. I'm not, as much as I respected him, I thought he's one of the GOATs when it comes to our business. Mike Wallace is 60 minutes. It's not 60 minutes. So even if it's you, Cole, you come up to the set, they bring you up to the set, and we get ready to do the interview. First thing I'm going to say is, man, how you doing? Everything's good? Cole, I got to ask you a couple hard questions here because you didn't make weight. I got to ask you about that. So I'm just letting you know. I'm always going to let you know. It's not going to be any surprise questions. And the same thing. The same thing happened with David. When we got there, they did the test. Like, hey, Brian, can you talk to him real quick? Hey, David, can you hear me? Yeah, I can hear you. Now, I got some tough questions for you, especially about you not making weight. I understand. So, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Absolutely.
Exactly. And then it's easy at that point because now they're expecting a question of that type. So now you can be like, okay, cool. Now I can segue this in. I can find a way to smooth this question in and not make him just feel uncomfortable. Give him a sec to formulate an answer. Let him kind of listen to his coach for a second. Like, what do you want to do?
Yes.
Okay, this is what we'll tell him. Okay.
Right.
You give him a minute. It's comfortable.
Yes.
And if not, he may go, you know what, man, I'd really rather we don't. But I got to ask you. Be like,
Absolutely.
If you got to ask, you got to ask, bro, but I'm probably not going to answer. I don't want to talk about that.
And we're cool with that. And now I know. Now I know.
Maybe you steer clear of it. Maybe you're just like, you know what? I won't push it.
Exactly. But at least I've done my job. I've done my job, and no one can say, well, oh, man, you didn't even ask him about not making weight, didn't you know he has his own gym? Why didn't you even ask him about that? You know what I mean?
There's ways to dance around that. You could be like, so I know you didn't make weight. I understand it's a tough subject for you, so we're going to fly past it.
Yeah.
But just know, I want to look you at home. I see you guys. We're all aware of it, but we know he doesn't want to talk about it. I'm going to respect that because he's a man, and we're going to move past it. At least people could be like, shit, he tried. Because what if it was Mike Tyson?
Right.
So Tyson doesn't want to talk about this, and fucking Mike looks like he's going to hit me already. So we're going to speed past this real quick. So Mike, what'd you have for lunch yesterday, man? So you got to respect it. So you got to treat it the same way. But there was a question, speaking of which, anyway, there was a question I would want to ask you because, granted, we've been picking your brain the whole time on your boxing knowledge, your experience, your interviews with the boxers and fighters and stuff. I wanted to ask you something a little more industry specific. Joe Rogan's $1 million exclusive signing with Spotify, how do you think that affected the landscape as a whole for podcasts? And do you think it would have affected it any differently had COVID not been a thing right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it sent shockwaves through the industry that podcasting is a thing. I think at the beginning it was just like, oh, okay, maybe it's some little cute medium, whatever, what have you. All of a sudden, when a guy gets paid $100 million to do this, now all of a sudden people are like, wait a minute. And even advertisers are like, wait a minute. I think there's a lot of people. This may be the way to go to advertise as opposed to television, as opposed to radio. Maybe I need to think about podcasting. People are in their cars at a lot, driving 30, 40 minutes, and they're listening to these podcasts. That's a great opportunity to get our message out. Let me start investing my money now. And this podcast may be something. And I think so. I think from an advertising thing, I think you see more companies now placing a lot more dollars into podcasting. So I think that's the benefit, number one. I think number two is probably why you've seen the proliferation of so many podcasts now, why they're so popular. It did nothing but enhance that because now people are saying, you know what? I can make a living off of this. For some, it was a hobby. Yeah, for some, it may have been a hobby. Now, others, this is their job. And they can make a comfortable living doing exactly what we're doing right now. So I would say, hey, look, it has done a lot for this industry. It has exploded. And then I think even with COVID, it has done nothing but enhance because, people needed programming and they needed stuff. Why not a podcast? I mean, for some, it's simple to do. And it's content. Listen, I was doing my podcast. Then all of a sudden, these networks just saw the guests we were getting, and they needed content because of COVID. There was no sports. They needed something. And all of a sudden, these networks, we started calling me like, hey, we really like that show. If you could make it into a show, that'd be great. Needed just 22 minutes. I know your podcasts are usually 50 minutes. Cut that down to 22 minutes of content. We can do some things here, and so I think it has done nothing but been a positive, not only for the industry, not only from an advertising standpoint, but programming standpoint. It has opened up a whole new industry and made podcasting, I think, something that a lot of people are now taking note of, whereas before they may have seen it as a hobby. Now they're saying, okay, this may be the way we spend a lot of our money and our advertising dollars.
Yeah, definitely, especially with the whole bubble, the world bubble right now.
Yes.
Like streaming is like the thing right now.
The thing. Yes.
I mean, everyone's on videos, teachers, school, work, everything. So now do you think that YouTube is now going to have to face a reality that we may start losing content to companies like Spotify because it's an exclusive deal? You will not be able to find new Joe Rogan material on YouTube. It is Spotify only if you want to hear him. So that all that fan base went with them. So now if, like, say your fan base, if Spotify came to you tomorrow, Brian, and said, look, we're putting The Last Stand with Brian Custer, and we're putting that on Spotify tomorrow, but only Spotify. Do you feel that Spotify has the money to start pulling these large content distributors, these large influencers over to exclusivity of them? And do you think it's worth doing that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Listen, even if the people at Spotify are listening, no, I'm going to stay the way I'm doing it. But now, if you want to throw me $50 million, I'm not even going to ask for the 100. I'm not going to be greedy because I've always been more of a humble guy. So if you want to give me $50 million, then you know that I'll be exclusive. Then I'll take my fan base and we'll just go to Spotify.
It works. Yeah. No, but yeah, so you see that it would be something where like the Yankees are doing. They can afford now to build a World Series team. Yep. They can afford to build a podcast powerhouse, if you will. Look, if you want the content, you got to come to Spotify now, whereas YouTube was just giving it away. Yep. They started to charge as you got viewers and stuff, but now it's just like to use the YouTube Red. YouTube Red's a thing. So that maybe that will become their competitive market. But with the signing of Joe Rogan, the reality is now that YouTube has competition.
Absolutely.
I guess, so to speak.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. I mean, it has really opened up so many channels here now, from, as you talked about, from a content standpoint, programming standpoint, exclusivity standpoint, advertising standpoint. All of it, man, is, wow. I tell you what, podcasting is something that a lot of people are looking into now these days.
Well, not only that, and you got to keep it entertaining, because I'm honest with you, everybody around my area and their grandmother had a podcast show, especially when this COVID hit. And not to be arrogant, because we're still striving to try to get there, but I asked myself, where are they now? And instead of being threatened, thinking, okay, there's so much competition, to me, I saw it as, okay, there's a little bit of exposure where you may yourself be exposed, because it may not be cut out for you. It's easy to say, hey, I want to get my own show and do this and that. But at the end of the day, as a host, if you can't conduct it all by yourself, every time there's our guest answers the phone or walks through that door, it's a blessing. Because you got to expect them not to show up, especially if you're going live, and you got to be able to feed them some content. You can only freestyle and BS for so long. At the end of the day, they're going to look at you, they're going to look right through you, and they're going to press that button that says delete. Yes. So for us, being a young show, we were saying, okay, Cole, now's the time where we get, all eyes are on us. We get a chance to show everybody that we can handle the mic, handle the stick, and just like you, get that opportunity, my man. And watching you and listening to this testimony that you're giving, I mean, I got goosebumps when you're talking, because my question is, why not us? And our time will come, because we're not exempt. I mean, if you can be blessed, so can we. And I'm saying that being very humble, because listening to you, and listening that actually God gave you the desire of your heart. You do what you love. You never work a day in your life, and you're living that dream right now.
And you know what? It's also one of those things, too, where you've got to be honest with yourself. It's kind of like what Cole was talking about when we were talking about fighters. You got to look yourself in the mirror and say, okay, what are you great at? What are you really good at? What are you deficient at? And then you got to make sure that you accentuate the positives. And so for me, listen, you guys are great. You guys can go on live and probably talk with each other and entertain your fan base. And you can do that. I don't know if I'm really good at that. To be honest with you, I don't know if I went live with my show and did it and tried to go for 22 minutes, or, you know, when we're doing the podcast, 50 minutes of me just talking about stuff that's going on, people after a couple of minutes be like, you know what, okay, yeah, this guy, I mean, I've heard enough. But for me, I realized that I've always had a great knack of talking with people and bringing things out, bringing out their story, and always having a good dialogue with people. And so for me, I felt like if I'm going to have my own podcast, have my own show, I want it to be more interview style, where I have that person, we talk about stories a lot of times that we've had off camera that I always said to myself, I really wish we were on camera talking about this, because fans would really love this kind of stuff. And so for me, that was my thinking when I came in with the show, not that I could do something that was about me and I sat in front of the camera and, you know, because like whether it's Rogan or whether it's Michael Rappaport, you know, he can do that. Rap can talk for 30 minutes by himself and just do that every other day or whatever. For me, I know that's not in my wheelhouse, but I can interview somebody and make it into a really good piece of content. And so I figured that, okay, I'm going to make sure that my show has that. I'm going to make sure that people who watch, who listen, get the opportunity to ask questions as well. And then we have a little fun. I always like to, you know, put them on a hot seat at the very end and ask questions that you've always wanted to ask that guy, but you felt like you couldn't. We can't really do it on Showtime or national TV. Now it's my show. I can ask him what I really want to say, you know. And, you know, it's just like, with Errol Spence. I mean, you know, first thing comes to your mind when I say, you know, Keith Thurman, and he was just like, man, fuck Keith Thurman. You know what I mean? It was beautiful. It was beautiful. I mean, it was organic, you know, that kind of stuff. So, you know, that's what I love, and I think that's what people love. That these guys are going to be honest and tell what they really meant. Hey, maybe I'm not going to talk to you like that on Showtime, Brian. But this is Joe. Yeah, I'll give you what I really think now, and that's so it goes to what accentuating your positives and knowing what you're really good at, and that's what I had to do, and that's why I patterned my show the way I did, and that's why you guys have been successful.
Well, you know what? We went over the hour, and we can go on another hour. And that was my whole thing. I said to myself, when we do this interview, I got to act like we played baseball together. We went to high school together. I got to get into his comfort zone. I've been studying you, and I finally stopped studying and said, you know what? Forget it. We're just going to do this and have some fun.
Absolutely.
And you being real with your feet on the ground, educated as far as all the cameras on you. You've been to the big show. You are at the big show. And to give us the opportunity to entertain the crowd, the viewers, the fans, and the followers, and for you to come on our show really does us, adjust us, and we appreciate your time, your honesty, and something tells me this relationship is going to continue. What's your take?
Absolutely, man. I appreciate it. It's been great. Been great finally getting the chance to meet you as well, Cole, man. This was more fun than I even anticipated. I didn't even know we went an hour. I thought it was like 30 minutes or so. I couldn't believe we've gone an hour. That just shows you how good you guys have become at doing this, because when you're having fun and the conversation is good, you know, you lose track of time. And so, man, this has been great.
Well, hey, keep your book open, man, because I want to have you back in December, that first week of December, man. We'll make some time, and we'll catch up, definitely. But I know me and Cole, we can go on, but hey, man, I know your schedule is tight, and I'm going to subscribe to your channel. I'm definitely going to follow you. And I hope everybody watching the show does follow you, and I hope everybody follows us as well, and that's The Fighter's Voice, www.youtube.com/The Fighter's Voice. Remember, every fighter has a voice, and so do you. It's a wrap here with Cole Escovedo, the Apache Kid, and ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank once again the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Brian Custer. Make sure you follow his show, subscribe, and press that like button, and also subscribe to The Fighter's Voice. I'll get your address later, Brian, because I got to brag, The Fighter's Voice official.
I love it,
man. So it's a wrap here. Thumbs up for Richie.